Hello and welcome to UPfront on JoyNews channel with me, Winston. Thank you very much for joining us today. So, finally, the Electoral Commission has fixed a date. Well, maybe a week, because they tell us that by the last week of June 2020, registration for the new voters register would begin. According to the Electoral Commission, it is expected to take them some 38 days to ensure that every person who qualifies to be registered is registered. And this is how they're going to do it. So there'll be a cluster of 5 polling stations. Each polling station would have 6 days of registration. So after the 6th day, there's a day's rest, where, according to the Electoral Commission, they'll be retooling and getting every other thing necessary for the registration exercise, and then move to the next polling station. Based on this particular format, according to the Electoral Commission, it is expected to take them 34 days in achieving the desired target of registering persons for the 2020 elections. Then, after the final day of registration in all the polling stations, the Electoral Commission anticipates that there could be some challenges. There could be the situation where some persons might not be ready or might not have registered, and so they would do what you call a mop-up, and that would take an additional 3 days. So picture it this way: 34 days to register, then there's a possibility that some persons wouldn't register, so there would be a day's rest, and then after that, there'll be a 3-day mop-up exercise in which they expect that all persons who qualify to be registered for the 2020 elections would be registered. But there are some other concerns, and these concerns have to do with COVID-19. The fact that in this era of COVID-19, the Electoral Commission should be thinking about the health of Ghanaians. Well, the Electoral Commission says there would be medical personnel at the polling stations. They also would ensure that the 1 meter, well, according to the Electoral Commission, 1 meter social distancing or physical distancing is observed between those who are coming to register. There will be thermometer guns, according to the Electoral Commission's Director of Electoral Services, Dr. Sribo Kwaku, to ensure that anybody whose temperature is above normal would be handed over to the medical team to be taken care of. But it still remains the case that a Ghana card and a passport are the 2 documents needed for registration. But in case you don't have these 2, well, you could resort to persons who have registered, vouching for you to ensure that you also register. What does this mean for the political parties, particularly the governing NPP that seem to be in favor of the compilation of a new voters register? Does it bring them joy? How sure are they that their own members would be registered or will be captured or have the required documents? Because according to the National Identification Authority, some 3.7 million Ghanaians have not been issued with Ghana cards. We'll delve into these issues today on Upfront. I'm Winston Amwa. When we return after the break, I'll be introducing my guest to you. And then we commence deliberations. We'll be right back. All right, so welcome back from that break, and thank you very much for staying with us. We'll be joined by the General Secretary of the governing NPP, Johnboadu, shortly. But before Johnboadu joins us to answer a few questions about what he makes of the whole exercise and whether he's excited about the fact that, one of the things that as a party they have wanted is going to be done for them. Kwesi Parker-Wilson, was at the Electoral Commission during the IPAC meeting. He's joined us. He'll be helping us understand what transpired there briefly before we get on to Zoom to speak to Johnboadu, who's General Secretary of the NPP. Parker-Wilson, thank you very much for joining us. So briefly tell us what transpired at the IPAC meeting today. Okay, so I think we don't have Parker yet, but let me just see if we have him now. Yes, Parker-Wilson, can you hear me? Good evening, and briefly tell us what transpired at the IPAC meeting today. All right, so since we don't have Parker-Wilson now, let's get to onto Zoom now and speak to General Secretary of the NPP, Johnboadu. John, good evening, and thank you very much for joining us. Good evening, John. Hello, John, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you. Good evening, how are you?
We are doing very well. Okay, so I see you in your mask, and that probably should be explaining it. But so you've been at the IPAC meeting today, and the Electoral Commission has told you its plans. As a party that is always talked about, that supported the need for a new voters register, clearly that should be one thing that should bring you a lot of joy, isn't it?
I didn't hear your question.
I'm asking that, as General Secretary of the NPP, and the NPP has talked about, it supported the need for a new voters register. Finally, with a date coming up, that should come as a joy to you, isn't it?
We have been at the forefront of ensuring that this register has been a source of worry for us, or particularly after the 2012 elections. We believe that the register was bloated. We believe that considering the reports and what happened in court, there's a need for a more credible register that has integrity for us to run. We push for it. The Salotose-led Electoral Commission, with the discussions that we all had, thought it wise that we could go with it into this election. After the 2016 elections, the Electoral Commission finds it necessary, and considering all the reasons that they've given, that there's a need for a new register to compiled by the Electoral Commission. We're about to do it in April 18, but for the COVID situation and the measures that the President had put in place at that time, so they postponed it indefinitely. Today we are called for an IPAC meeting, and the Electoral Commission is clear in their mind that towards the end of June, the compilation of the new register.
Okay, Johnboadu, if you could kindly speak up a bit for us. I see you are in your mask, that probably might explain it, but if you could kindly speak up a little bit so that we can hear you very clearly. You're talking about end of June, yes, just continue from there.
I'm saying that by the decision of the Electoral Commission today, just ended IPAC meeting, the Electoral Commission has slated the end of June as the beginning of the compilation of the new register. That will span to about 40 days. So by end of July, we'll be able to finish the compilation.
But for you as a political party, John, aren't you worried that the Electoral Commission talks about, the usage of the Ghana card and passport? The concern for many Ghanaians has been the fact that how many Ghanaians even have, Ghanaian passports? How many Ghanaians have access to Ghana card? NIA says it's released about 7 million of them. Some 3.7 million still yet to be released. Aren't you concerned that some of your party members could be disenfranchised in this process?
It's a concern that we raised in our March 25th meeting we had at IPAC. And thankfully, the NIA has come out with the figures that they have. They've been able to issue out some of the cards that they registered people for. About almost 2.7 million of the cards have not been issued yet. When we compare the registrable people that ought to have been enrolled, close to 6 to 7 million have not been enrolled yet. If you are really looking at it politically, we in the New Patriotic Party are the ones who are disadvantaged with where we are now, because if you take the 2.7 people whose cards have not yet been issued to them, if you take only 4 regions, Eastern region, Central region, Greater Accra and Ashanti region, that constitutes close to around 68% of the total number of people who have not yet received their cards out of their registration. If you take the number of people who have not enrolled at all but are qualified to be enrolled, that also, if you take Eastern, Central, Ashanti, and Greater Accra. That constitutes close to around 45%. Ashanti region alone, close to 1 million plus, you understand? But I understand that we raised this issue as IPAC, understanding from the Electoral Commission by their response is that since they have opened up and slated the last quarter of June for the beginning of the registration exercise, it gives the NIA also ample time not only to do mop-up in areas that the numbers were not that much, but do mop-up or mass registration in the entire regions in order to ensure that a lot more people have their names on the or have the NIA card. The solution from the Electoral Commission perspective is to increase the number of people who can vouch for guarantees from 5 to 10. In our view, is also not enough. But we must all work within and the COVID period and see how best all of us can make sure that the December elections can be held successfully. Because whether we like it or not, December 7th, we must have both parliamentary and presidential elections. We have people, even if we're not going to do a new register, we will have people who have turned the age of 18 as we speak now. So it is something that we all must bring our minds together.
Okay, but I mean, if
we have a register that is good.
If you say that your party is going to be disadvantaged based on the figures you share with us, Ashanti Central, Greater Accra, Eastern Region, 68% of those who haven't been issued, are your persons who are likely to have voted for your party, and constitute 68% of those who haven't been issued, and these are areas that you think you would have gotten more. Why don't you then support, the NDC's argument that the current voters register be used as part of documents needed for the registration exercise?
The NDC is doing argument in bad faith. First of all, for them to say that we in the New Patriotic Party are conniving with the Electoral Commission and I have no basis because it has no foundation. It is an unnecessary dragging of the New Patriotic Party in that needless exercise. They had the opportunity to be at the meeting March 25th when this issue about amendment of CI 91 was discussed. They ignorantly didn't even know we discussed it. They held press conferences. Elvis Ankra, the minister who was responsible for our trip to Brazil, who messed up, had he insulted me, so you listen to me. Had the effrontery to even challenge the position that I raised about having discussion at IPAC on the amendment of CI 91. It is based on that discussion that CI that had been laid in Parliament was withdrawn. So the CI, as we are working with, is a CI that was laid in Parliament or relayed in Parliament on 31st of March. So he didn't even know. He thought that the CI that was laid in Parliament on 17th of March. So you see, they are talking in bad faith. We have raised the issues with the Electoral Commission. We are at the meeting, we discussed it, and it is our hope that NIA will also put up and also increase their presence and make sure that a lot more people get the card before we get into. We want to discourage the process of ensuring that a lot of people are guaranteed. So we think that with government supporting NIA and also making sure that social distance protocols are observed in this process, we'll be able to
help me understand the bad faith that you talk about. So is it a case that for that bad faith, you would have supported the usage of the current voters ID in the process?
What do you mean by current voters ID? There's nothing like current voters ID.
Voters ID card. There's currently a
voters ID card or register become outdated if there's a need to update it all the time. had it not been the fact that the Electoral Commission, because of reasons that they've alluded already for which they want to change the register, will obviously have a new register, because we have to either do a limited registration exercise or decide to validate the register and all that. So we don't have anything like a voter or old voter ID card ever in our history. So sometimes we confuse that.
So just by way of clarification, I meant the voter's ID card as I have it now. My voter's ID card that I currently have, since there is no compilation of a new voter's register, that voter's card which I have is still valid. And if I go to a bank, for instance, I
still valid to the extent that the Electoral Commission will want you to use that as a basis for voting in the next election. So every now and then there are changes in our voter register as a result of what the CI is at any given point in time. So you can't say that I have a voter ID card and that that is the voter ID card I'll use for elections. No, we don't do it.
So my question, the question that I asked, you've talked about the bad faith, and I want to know what you consider as the NDC acting in bad faith. And I'm asking, so, but for that, would you have supported that position, since you had also raised concerns which the EC explained to you? That's what I'm asking you.
I'm saying that we as political parties under the canopy of IFAC are advisory body. You understand? The Electoral Commission is the election management organization or institution that have the responsibility of ensuring that elections are transparent, elections are free and fair, elections are credible. So if you put out your argument, it is up to the Electoral Commission to agree with you. Just as we did in 2015, where all arguments pointed to the fact that our register is bloated, our register is not credible, and all that. At the end of the day, when the Electoral Commission took a decision that they are going to go ahead and use the register then, there's little that we could do. That's what our laws are fashioned out, and there's nothing that we could do. Before that ultimate meeting that we held a series of press conferences, we organized demonstrations, some of our members were beaten and all that. But that's the extent to which we can go for the loss of our country.
So let's look at another issue now. So you've talked about the fact that the Electoral Commission says they're going to make everything work. As General Secretary, aren't you concerned that we are having, this exercise during an era of COVID-19, and there's a possibility of persons queuing to register contracting COVID-19?
I'm very concerned. If I had my way, we wouldn't even have elections at all. If I had my way. If I had my way, we would still be under lockdown to ensure that nobody is infected by anybody. You understand? But that is not what it is. We have a constitution that is very strict, that is rigid, a constitution that if by December 7th we are unable to have parliamentary and presidential elections, we may end up being a constitutional crisis. And by our rules, the election on December 7th is just an event, but there's a process towards that event that if we are unable to go through that process, it will be very difficult for us to even have the December 7th election. And that process includes having a credible voter register, doing a exhibition of the register, opening nomination for would-be candidate or prospective candidate, and making sure that we complete the exercise of compiling the final register in order for political parties to have access to it, having early voting before December 7th. And these are processes that you can't jump. These are processes that if you want to have elections on December 7th, there's no way you can jump these processes. So in the midst of COVID, just as in other countries, in the midst of COVID, they've been able to manage to have elections on 7 social distance protocols. Korea had theirs, Mali had theirs, just recently Burundi had theirs, and in October Tanzania is going to have their election. I don't think that we are living in isolation or living in an island. We are in the world that we are all compromising to make sure that in the midst of COVID, we should do in order to further our nation state, in order not to send our nation into any chaos. So chaotic situations. I think that if you give me the option, I will pray that we shouldn't have elections. We have a constitution that we are all governed by that constitution. That will make it difficult.
Well, maybe you have an option of maybe you have an option of a limited registration exercise. What that would mean then is that not too many people get to the.
Unfortunately, I'm not the one that takes that decision.
I know, but you can also share.
So we believe that our position really is that this old register is outdated. This register is outdated. This register is obsolete. The company that was running the register even run out of contract with the Electoral Commission. If we decide to even use it, it will be difficult for them to run it, because how they ran it in those times was that they were going to even help the Electoral Commission to have the necessary competence to be able to manage it. That was not done. That was not done. I don't think that we need to overflog the issue. We are where we are. We have taken the decision. The meeting we all had with the eminent advisors to the Electoral Commission, majority of the political parties agreed that we should have a new register. We're waiting for the Electoral Commission to come out with its roadmap. They've come out with the roadmap. They said they are starting the registration by the last week of June to end by the last week of July. They put in place measures to protect us in order to ensure that by the end of our registration we will not also be afflicted by coronavirus. Then all of us have the responsibility of protecting ourselves towards this exercise. The options are limited, and I think that we need to move forward.
Talking about the discussion with the eminent committee, because there's been different opinions. The NDC says in that particular meeting the agreement was that current voter ID cards will be accepted as documents to enable you register.
Agreement with who?
In a meeting with the eminent committee.
No, by who?
Commission. The parties present agreed.
There wasn't any agreement like that at that committee. At that meeting, all of you were there. And at the end of the exercise, a statement was issued. And that statement did not contain any decision that an old register or old voter card will be used as identification card towards the registration of new members on the register. I don't think that any such agreement was reached. I don't know whether it was reached with themselves, but for us at the meeting, nothing like that.
So I mean, let's get back to one point that you made. I mean, you talked about how as a party you feel you're going to be disadvantaged. The EC has explained to you. Do I get the impression that you're convinced by the explanation given you by the Electoral Commission that as a political party, the current system being used would not disadvantage the NPP?
We are not convinced, because we still have an opportunity to also engage NIA. Because just as I've told you, looking at the numbers and looking at the areas they were able to cover, we in particular, that's why I said that the NDC did that in bad faith. That's why I said that maybe they didn't even know the numbers and the effects of the numbers. If there's any political party that have to complain, it is a new patriotic party who would think that the NIA is working in connivance with NDC to rig the elections. We didn't come to that conclusion because the numbers are not in our favor, considering where our strongholds are. Because sometimes if you take Ashanti region alone, it can take care of about 3 or 4 regions. So that if you have in some regions that the coverage is around 50%. If you compare it to even Ashanti region that the coverage is 75%, the difference of 30% may be more than 60% of 5 regions. You understand? Yes. So if you put together these 4 regions as stated, the number of people who have not been issued cards, who have registered, constitutes 68% of the entire 16 regions, which is to our disadvantage. So we think that that is not, it is not our faulty to start accusing NIA or start accusing Electoral Commission. We believe that the NIA have the capacity, if they are given the opportunity, to remedy the situation, and we believe that they will be able to.
And so when the NIA releases the remaining 3.7, 2.7, is it a case that once that is done, you'll be okay and then could go ahead with the registration exercise without having the kind of issues that you have?
It's not enough. There's a need for mass registration of other areas that have not been sufficiently covered. You understand, by their own statistics. And I think that since the Electoral Commission have taken a decision and given some range of when they are going to begin the exercise, the NIA as a public institution, also knowing very well that their role is critical in the Electoral Commission's job, will also roll out a process that will make sure that this challenge is remedied.
Talking about the NIA having to do a mass registration, do I get the understanding that it's part of the discussions you're going to be having when you say you are going to engage with the NIA, you want to engage with them to ensure that they're able to roll out a mass registration to enable a lot of Ghanaians have
well, if they want to call it a mop-up, but I think that mop-up, according to the Executive Secretary of NIA, was only looking at some of the regions that they were not able to cover very well. But looking at the figures, it's not a question of mopping up, it's a question of making sure that a lot more of the areas that people were unable to enroll are also covered. I'll give you the typical example of Ashanti region, where over 1 million people who are qualified to be registered were not registered. Although the percentage in there is higher than a place like Upper West, but still, if you are looking at the numbers, and we as political parties are doing numbers games, we are not doing percentage games.
Well, talking about not doing percentage games, for instance, you know, the NDC also makes the point that in strongholds, their strongholds like the Upper East and Upper West regions, you know, fewer people have been issued. And so if they look at those numbers, for instance, they are disadvantaged. And not you.
It cannot be true. It cannot be true, because if you look at this country, in terms of even strongholds, NDC has just about 5 weeks. Based on the previous, just ended elections. You can only talk about Upper West. Upper West, we had 5 out of the 11 constituents. It is only in Upper East that we had 4. We had 3. They had 12. If you come to Northern region proper, we had 8. They also had 8. We had 9. That's 18 constituents. We had 9. They also had 9. If you take Northeast, we had 3. They also have 3. If you take Savannah, they have 7. We had 1. If you take Bono, we are almost 98% of all the seats there. If you take Ahafo, we have 6. They have 2. If you take Ashanti region, have 44. They have 3. If you take Eastern region, we have close to 70%. If you come to Greater Accra, we have 24. They have 13. We have 20, 24. If you take Central region, have 19. They have just 4. If you take Western region. So putting together any process that is put in place is the new patriotic party that is going to be at the disadvantage.
But Johnboadu, you know, for instance, and you're talking about the seats, and you know, for instance, that if you go for the old northern region, in a constituency like Savelugu, the NPP's candidate won, but John Mahama won in that constituency. If you look at...
If you want to do... Let me get straight. Let me get straight to you. If you want to do that analysis, I can do more...
No, so you hold on. Once I'm done, you'll understand. No, you hold on. Once I'm done, you understand. So the point I'm making is that traditionally, and I'll use the old 10 regions for purpose of this analysis, traditionally, we know these regions are swing regions. The central region, the western region, and the Brong-Ahafo regions. These and the Greater Accra region. 4 regions are swing regions. We know the eastern region and Ashanti region as being regions that naturally vote for the NPP. We know the Volta, Upper East, Upper West, and Northern regions as regions that the NDC wins in these regions. So if that is the case, yes, the NPP won.
I won't employ you as a political consultant. You are living in the past. You are living in the past. We are talking about now, and we are looking at regions which are independent of other regions now. We have Northeast now. We have Northern region. We have Savannah. Even in Brong-Ahafo region, the old one that we had the Pono, we have the Ahafo, we have the Pono. You understand? If you take even Western region, we have Western North, we have Western region. Then you come to Central, and all that. I'm saying that based on facts available now, the recent elections that we held, the NDC cannot say that they have majority of the regions as their stronghold. Even that, you are saying that most of these regions are swing regions. So how come they become the stronghold?
Well, I talked about that.
About constituencies that we won but lost presidential. It is the same with the NDC. There are about 6 constituencies that we won presidential but lost parliamentary. If you are talking about marginal constituencies, if you look at the analysis, we are in a stronger position than the NDC. So I think that it was premature, it was very unnecessary for them to drag us into their parochial thinking about us knifing friends, NIA and Electoral Commission to make it. I think that it's unfortunate a whole political party like them will come very low to the level.
So one other issue that has been of concern to many Ghanaians, of course, we know that there is currently a ban on public gathering in place. We don't know when the president would lift it, but of course the Electoral Commission has a date fixed. But I do know also that as General Secretary of the NPP, you do know a lot of things. Is it likely that all things being equal, the ban is going to be lifted soon, and that's paving way for the exercise to continue?
I know a lot of things, but a lot of things that is at the bottom of the field. So he's the only person who can let you know whether some of these restrictions are going to be eased or removed or lessened. I will not be. It is his duty, and that one I don't think that anybody can do. Because I can say this today, but he can decide to change his mind tomorrow. So let us leave that with him. He's been meeting with his COVID team and assessing the situation on a daily basis. And I can assure you, the president's management of coronavirus in our environment is one thing that we must all be thankful to God that he is the president now, because the attention he has given to this pandemic and the measures that he has taken. It is to the delight of the world. A lot of the countries are now beginning to learn from things that we have done months ago, and I think that's positive. And he will take the decision as he has said the situation at any given.
But you know, when I spoke to you in April, this year, you talked about the fact that, you know, looking at how the president is managing COVID-19, there's a possibility that by end of May, the ban will be lifted, and then the Electoral Commission could go ahead to do.
Yes, I was hoping so, because like I told you, December elections or December 7 election is a must. And if that event must occur, processes leading to that event must also occur. And if you are looking at the Electoral Commission and its work, there are constraints to what they do. If, for instance, they do a registration exercise, 90 days after the registration exercise, they must provide or produce a provisional register. 90 days from end of July takes you to almost September. They must do exhibition for a number of days around that time. After the exhibition, they must be able to provide a final register that will be around October. Our constitution is also clear that not later than 90 days or 30 days to the myself or the national election, you must open a nomination for a prospective aspirant for parliamentary and presidential candidates. So you realize that it is tight. So if you understand the process well, you know, without being a clairvoyant or being somebody who have inside information, know that the Electoral Commission must be given the opportunity to start the process of compiling register by end of June, if they have to be able to organize elections. There's no
okay.
Unless you are praying that just as the NDC is praying that the election should not come on, right?
Oh, how do you know the NDC is praying the election should
I'm
not
saying
come?
so because you are given the opportunity to be part of the discussion of an amendment to the CI. You boycotted it. That amendment was taken to a committee that you have members on it. About 2-3 months ago, you sat on your right. You did not say anything at the amendment that has proposed. You waited 2 months after that before you held a press conference to state your position. So if we are to even take the view of the NDC and say that, so they are more sensible with the argument that they've raised, so let us take NDC's position. What it means is that we have to withdraw the CI that has spent some days in Parliament, recraft the CI, send it back to Parliament, let it run for additional 21 days. That will get us the CI maturing in around August. You do, even if you want to do limited registration exercise, that takes you close to 30 days. That is around September. Within 40 days after the 30 days, you need to give political parties provisional register. That will be around. You have 90 days or not later than 30 days to elections. You will not be able to open nomination for parliamentary and presidential elections. So your elections will be held in January. So if I tell you the NDC was not, unless they don't understand the constitutional provisions that restrict and constrain the Electoral Commission in these constraints, unless they don't know. If they don't know, I forgive them. But if they know, which I expect them to know, it means that they don't even want us to have the election in December.
Well, maybe Parliament can actually sit throughout the week just to make sure that the 21 days are up. But before we wrap up, finally, as General Secretary of the NPP...
Sitting throughout the week, it cannot be 9 days in a week. We only have 7 days.
Yeah, 7 days. So 21 days you could get there in, by the 21st of June. But let me just...
How can you get there by 21st of June?
Oh, I am just saying that there are 21 days. So if you sit Monday to Sunday, you get the 21 sitting days. But let me just move on because we need to be wrapping up. The NPP, the last time we spoke, you were talking about, how COVID-19 had affected your planned elections. Do you have a new plan in place for your parliamentary primaries, NPP?
Yeah, it has not only affected, it has affected almost all political parties. You listen to the NDC, they elected their presidential candidate almost a year and a half ago, but they said they've not been able to choose their running mate because of COVID-19. They've not also done a lot of primaries to elect their parliamentary candidates, just as we've also not been able to do for where we have 50 members of parliament. Just as you are aware, because we have the same master, we as political parties, the electoral commission, and all stakeholders must be allowed to also have a way of also preparing towards the election. So depending on what happens, if President eases public gathering restrictions a little, then we will be able to put in place elaborate measures of the social distance protocols to protect our people and allow people to be able to elect our parliamentary candidates. There are a lot of options.
What are those options?
Well, the options are normally we'll have held the elections at one center, bringing together all the polling station executives to that center. We can decide to centralize it by doing it at the electoral area. That will involve just about 50 people at one electoral area. And come back and compile the entire, collate the results at the constituency center, which is an option that we are exploring. Even there's an option where we are even thinking about e-voting at this time, that if we are lucky and measures are eased by NPA, then we can quickly look at this other option to give our people the right to elect.
Well, thank you very much, Johnboadu, General Secretary of the NPP, for joining us. We're grateful that you made time to join us today on Upfront. My name is Winston. I'm on behalf of the team. Thank you so much for joining us. Up next is JoyNews Prime. Have a lovely evening.